Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Annual General Meeting of United Way Hastings and Prince Edward. My name is Tim Bannon and I am Chair of the Board of Directors. This is our first and hopefully last annual general meeting held by video conference. The pandemic response requirements have made it impossible for us to hold an in-person meeting. However, we will persevere. And that said, we do have some pretty good technology that allows us to still hold an effective and efficient meeting. Before we get started, I will point out that we are recording the proceedings today, and we will be posting the video on YouTube as well as our website. We will also be distributing the video to our major donors and to our corporate partners. Along with that, our annual report, as well as the audited financial statements that we'll be reviewing shortly, are now available on our website. On behalf of the Board of Directors and our staff, we'd like to thank everyone who made the 2019-2020 year another success, and we congratulate you all for being a part of an incredible community effort once again. This past year saw United Way Hastings and Prince Edward launch new community engagement activities, challenge ourselves and the community to achieve robust campaign goals, partner with local organizations to ensure a responsive sector, engage with new businesses and corporations to join the United Way movement, and lastly, build our brand and profile across the region. With a diverse and complementary range of skills at the board level, we worked hard to ensure that we are efficient and effective in our mandate to improve lives and build community. We're proud that 82.5 cents of every dollar raised is invested in programs and services right here at home. With just 17.5 cents of each dollar, United Way Hastings and Prince Edward is able to fundraise on behalf of 41 other organizations across the region, truly leveraging the community's capacity to give. This year, our board will bid a fond farewell to Jessica Longlade. Jessica's contribution has been invaluable as our treasurer. Her commitment and dedication to United Way is valued and appreciated, and we wish her well. Although I will continue my board membership, this is my last report to the community as the chair of United Way Board of Directors, now that my 2-year term is completed. This presents us with an opportunity for the organization to upgrade, and I'm very happy to report, if everything goes according to plan in about 30 minutes, Kathy Rushton will be taking over as the board chair. We're very fortunate to have somebody of Kathy's caliber moving into that role. So for myself, it's been a pleasure for me to lead an esteemed group of people who contribute their time, expertise, and passions to ensuring our organization is transparent, accountable to our stakeholders, and effective in our work. We look forward to what the next fiscal year has in store for us. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 2 in tonight's agenda. And before we have a motion, I just want to point out that there was a typo in the annual general meeting minutes of 2019 in the appointment of the auditors section. And thank you, Gail Walker, for pointing that out. That has been corrected in our file copy, and so we can carry on then with the motions. So if I could get a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and adopt them, appreciate it.
So I'm going to move that the reading of the minutes of the previous annual meeting, 25th, 2019, be waived and adopted as reported.
Okay, thank you, Anne Marie. Could a seconder, please?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Any discussion, issues? None noted. All in favor? Against? Abstaining? None. Okay, motion carried unanimously. Moving on to agenda item number 3, then I'll turn it over to Brandy Hodge for our Executive Director's report.
I think I just unmuted myself. Did that work okay?
Yep.
Everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So on behalf of our whole staff team, thank you for joining us at our first ever virtual annual general meeting of United Way Hastings and Prince Edward. It's a slightly awkward way to address our stakeholders. However, it is proving to be somewhat efficient and effective in ways we may not have considered in the past. For those of you watching this after the fact, I invite you to review our annual report and our audited financial statements on our website at unitedwayhpe.ca. AGMs provide the unique opportunity for organizations like ours to reflect back on a year of successes, achievements, challenges, and hard work, and what a year it has been. It began with an incredibly busy summer, launching 3 new events with 27 new partners. The Amazing Race, hosted by the Quinte District Association of Realtors, proved to be an incredible day that engaged new workplaces, new participants, and new sponsors. The Belleville Dragon Boat Club approached us to resurrect the Dragon Boat Festival from years gone by, supporting the United Way campaign, and we launched the first ever Cars for Community initiative, a legacy of the late Peter Smith. We engaged 25 local automotive dealerships from Bancroft to Picton and everywhere in between, demonstrating just how committed our local automotive industry is to helping individuals and families in their community. The year culminated with a campaign achievement of $1.96 million, surpassing the goal of $1.95 million. And over $1 million of that came from individuals and employees working within workplaces, neighbors caring for neighbors. $467,000 came from corporate partners, and just over $450,000 came from matching programs like the Morris Rowlands Leadership Challenge, grants, special events, and foundations such as the Parrott Foundation. In between all of that, and over the course of the full year, United Way Hastings and Prince Edward funded 44 agencies and 65 programs, and 5 collaborations. Through those investments, 45,000 lives were changed. More than 15,000 children and youth received the supports they needed from mentoring programs, youth centers, volunteer opportunities, and mental health supports. More than 4,300 people with disabilities were able to access programs and services that supported their independence, their goals, and their inclusion in their neighborhoods and community. More than 20,000 people were able to access a transportation program that allowed them to get to work, to school, and to medical appointments. These transportation programs deeply impact rural areas where transportation is vital to a person's independence and their opportunities to rise out of poverty. With a grant from the Government of Canada, the Youth to Youth program was sparking innovative thinking and working in partnership with community leaders across our region to help increase solutions to local issues that are identified by youth. The Youth to Youth group hosted the 2nd Youth Summit in 2019, hosting 150 local change-making youth from all corners of Hastings, Prince Edward. They were introduced to 40 youth-serving organizations and 15 dignitaries. The day focused on expanding youth and allies' knowledge of mental health and wellness, how to use technology as a tool, sexual health, substance awareness, environmental sustainability, human equity, financial literacy, and how to build youth-friendly communities. It was an incredible success, and we look forward to building on that in 2020. If you'd like to read the report from the 2019 summit, you can find that on our website at unitedwayhpe.ca/youth-2-youth. We also revitalized the Fresh for All program that drives the donation of fresh foods to 25 local food banks and food programs. The Day of Caring was bigger and better than ever, with 136 volunteers completing over 800 hours of labor at 20 different projects within 14 different organizations. 2-in-1 served over 1,200 callers in 2019, and during the pandemic have doubled their call volume from our community, providing resources and referrals to people looking for help. Our ability to do all of those things and so much more than what can be captured in an 8-minute report to the community is enabled and amplified by people's knowledge of who we are and their belief and confidence in what we do. With a year-long intentional effort to increase our brand recognition and our prominence in our community, we are better known and better understood than we've ever been before. Our commitment to transparency and accountability is beyond reproach, and we've ended the year by investing, as Tim said, 82.5 cents of every single dollar raised back into the community. We've leveraged 17.5 cents of costs to effectively and efficiently fundraise on behalf of 45 other organizations. Before I close with a few thoughts on our current situation and how we move forward, I want to acknowledge our team. We've said goodbye to a few over the course of the past couple of months, with Rhea, Brooke, and Melissa's contracts ending, and with Paula moving back home to Sarnia. Our team is small but mighty. With Melanie Cressman's leadership, she and Jennifer Smith guide our fundraising efforts. With Jody Cooper's leadership, she, Alyssa Cook, and Caitlin Lalonde guide our community impact initiatives. Corrine Engelman diligently manages our finances, and Tracy Reed is the brilliance behind our creative communications and marketing. They are a skilled, dynamic group of women, and I thank them for their commitment and their hard work. I also want to thank Tim Bannon. We will continue to benefit from your perspective and thoughtful leadership as you move out of the chair position and into the past chair role. Given that today is your last day as chair of our board, I wanted to express my gratitude for your patient guidance and leadership that you've given not only to our organization, but to me personally, as I transitioned from a staff role into the leadership role here at United Way. You have a quiet, respectful, and knowledgeable approach, and I thank you for sharing all of it. I want to say thank you for trusting me to lead and for giving me the space to do so. I believe we've accomplished all that we have over the past year, in large part because we as a team had the confidence and the partnership of our board of directors. It has been an absolute pleasure to hold the executive director position under your leadership, Tim, and thank you very much for everything. And finally, it would be remiss to not acknowledge the fact that the world has been turned upside down. Literally weeks away from our fiscal year end, COVID-19 hit our shores, and it quickly turned into a defining moment for the United Way movement and for the not-for-profit sector as a whole. I'll close with a few thoughts on the importance of the not-for-profit sector. Pre-COVID, COVID, and post-COVID, this is how we started to categorize our work, because in a very few short weeks, the experiences that we've had in our home lives, in our professional lives, and in our social lives are how we have defined the differences of those times. What we were doing pre-COVID is craved, during COVID feels temporary, and post-COVID is unknown. We are in a period of constant rapid change with an inability to predict what will happen tomorrow, let alone 2 weeks from now. It's stressful and it's challenging and it's exhausting. And yet it's also inspiring, it's hopeful, and it's energizing. During a time that was so precarious, one where streets emptied overnight, where parking lots were vast and vacant, and where worry was rampant, the not-for-profit sector quickly, efficiently, and quietly went to work. We mobilized our teams, volunteer and staff, to not only serve our mandated populations, but the community as a whole. Gaps were quickly identified and closed, mandates were stretched, flexibility, innovation, and creativity were amplified. Our whole community was stronger for it. Our health sector was able to focus on the health crisis because our social sector was focused on the social crisis. Much of that work was and is enabled by United Way donors. The ability to serve, to mobilize, and to respond was made so much easier because we have a strong, healthy, and vibrant network of organizations well supported by this community, by you. They were willing and ready to do whatever it took to ensure vulnerable populations were protected. And for that, we thank you, our donors, for recognizing the importance of the not-for-profit sector. As we close out the last fiscal year, one full of local love, we welcome a new one, and with it will come challenges, but we're ready. We are proud to work together with you, our donors, our supporters, volunteers, partners, and funded agencies to showcase this community's resilience and commitment to each other. Your United Way is here for you, and we look forward to moving from response to recovery. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much, Brandy, for that report and also for those kind words. We'll move on to agenda item number 4 now. We'll call on Zach Kruger from Wilkinson and Company, LLP, to give us a financial report.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me, everybody. Definitely an interesting audit period this year, but we were able to get through what we needed, and I can run through this independent auditor's report for you quickly here. It's a clean opinion for an organization such as the United Way, and it's mainly unchanged from what you would have seen in the prior year, so I'll just hit the highlights of it. So it starts by stating that we have audited the financial statements of the organization, which comprise the statement of financial position as at March 31st, 2020, the statement of operations and changes in fund balances and cash flows for the year then ended, and the notes to the financial statements, including the significant accounting policies. In our opinion, except for the possible effects of the matter described in the basis for qualified opinion section, these statements do present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the organization as at March 31st, 2020, and its results of operations and its cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So the next section just speaks to the basis for the qualified opinion, which is very common for a charity and not-for-profit, which receives a large amount of cash donations or fundraising revenue. Given we can't always determine the period that cash revenue was received, the completeness of that revenue is qualified, and the verification is limited to what's recorded in the books by the organization. So aside from that, everything's clean. It's what you want to see in an auditor's report. It does go on to note that the responsibilities of these of management is to prepare these statements and ensure they're free from material misstatements, and ensure that the organization's ability to continue as a going concern. The board is charged with overseeing the financial reporting process, and the second page goes on to detail more standard terms on our responsibilities as auditors. This hasn't changed from prior years. It does finalize with, it's dated June 10th, 2020, which was the date the audit committee, finance committee approved the statements on behalf of the board. I think that's most of what I needed to get through, so I'll pass it on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Zach. We'll move on to agenda item number 5 and turn it over to Jessica Longley for the
Thanks, Tim.
presentation of the financial statements.
Thanks, Tim. So getting into the numbers, we can start on page 3 of the finance package for the financial statements. So page 3, the statement of financial position as at March 31st, 2020. In the total column, the total cash balance at year end is $628,000. Of that, $540,000 is held in the operating fund, and $84,000 is in the internally restricted bequests and special trust fund. Cash increased $248,000 from prior year. The increase is mainly due to the timing of a corporate matching pledge, which was received just prior to year end. And so that brought the cash balance up and decreased the pledge receivable account accordingly. Further decreasing the pledge receivable account was the allowance for uncollectible pledges, which increased by $30,000 as a conservative estimate of the impact on uncollectible pledges caused by COVID-19. Portfolio investments with a market value of $250,000 are held in the contingency fund. The tangible capital assets balance is $489,000. Amortization was the only activity here. There were no acquisitions or disposals of capital assets. The year ended with total assets of $1.83 million. Moving down to the liability section on the same page. The organization's largest liability is allocations payable to funded agencies of $1.095 million. This commitment has increased over prior year in relation to the increased campaign achievement. And you can see on Schedule 4, that lists the 36 agencies that will be receiving these allocations over the next year. The donor designation liability net of allowances is sitting at $31,000. $13,000 was set up as a deferred revenue, as it is revenue that pertains to the March 2021 fiscal year. Overall, the organization is ending the year with a healthy fund balance at $618,000, which is up $295 from prior year. So over to page 4, the statement of operations and changes in fund balances. In the operating fund column, gross campaign revenue this year was nearly $1,999,000. It increased $104,000 from prior year. The increase was in large part from the additional special events held over the year. Uncollectible pledges also rose after the COVID-19 allowance for uncollectibles. Pledge loss would have otherwise decreased this year. There was a small increase in interest income compared to last year. The other income revenue had a decrease of $20,000 from prior year. And this decrease is because it's the last year of writing down an old liability by bringing it back into other income. So we won't have that going forward. Program income increased to $82,000 from $17,000. This program was just starting up at the end of last year, and it continued over the full fiscal year. So we're seeing a full year of program revenue here compared to partial last year. And lastly, in the revenue section, there's a new revenue line of $16,000, which is the new government wage subsidy accrued retroactive to March 15th. And the expenditures, they are fully detailed on schedules 1, 2, and 3 towards the back of the financial statement package. The organization allocates costs into 2 functional areas, fundraising and programs. General costs that don't pertain specifically to either of those functions are considered administrative and are allocated evenly to fundraising and program costs, as shown on Schedule 3. Fundraising expenditures, these totaled $370,000. These costs are shown in detail on Schedule 1. Fundraising expenses increased by $11,000 from prior year. The increases were seen in service charges expenses, additional fundraising costs associated with the increase in special events held over the year, and the related campaign fundraising supplies. Program expenditures, these are detailed on Schedule 2. Allocations and designation expenses were $1.2 million. That's an increase of $47,000 in allocations to member agencies over prior year, which again was a result of the higher campaign revenue. The other program expenditures also increased from last year to $440,000. Specifically, there were more grants issued in the year, and also the youth-to-youth program costs increased significantly here, but they were fully offset by program income, so had no net cost despite the increase shown here in expenses. So the bottom line for the operating fund, not including interfund transfers, was a deficiency of $8,133. The internally restricted funds had interest and investment income of $8,428 with no expenditures. So overall, across all funds, the organization ended the year with a small increase in fund balance of a total of $295. The accompanying notes form an integral part of the financial statements. These notes are relatively standard, so I'll just draw your attention to two of the notes this year. The first being Note 3. This note identifies a change in accounting policy, which was accounted for retrospectively. The organization began recognizing donor-designated revenue and expenses when pledged, rather than when received and paid out. So as a result, 2 lines of the comparative figures were restated to reflect the change in policy. And then note 11 is a new note related to COVID-19. And so this note just outlines the pandemic's impact on these financials. So with that, I will ask somebody to move that the audited financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Okay, I, Chris Hepburn, move that the audited financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Thanks, Chris. Can I get a seconder?
I second. Bonnie Sweet.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, so moved. And agenda item number 6, appointment of the auditors. In accordance with the policy established by the Board of Directors, our auditors are to be appointed annually. I move that Wilkinson and Company be appointed auditors for the coming year for United Way of Hastings and Prince Edward. Can I get a seconder?
I'll second that, Jessica. Alvin Green.
Thanks, Alvin. All in favor? Looks like everyone. No one's opposed. So moved.
Great. Thank you very much, Jessica. Good report. We'll now move on to agenda item 7, the nominating committee report. We have a number of directors who are currently midterm. It's myself, Tim Bannon, representing Quinte Labor Council, Mark Burgoyne and Bonnie Sweet, Elvin Green, Jeff Hohenkirk, Kathy Rushton, Susan Thomas, Ann Dawson, and Chris Hepburn. We have directors returning, requiring re-election, and this group is appointed for a 3-year term. Bob Howe, Anne Marie Murphy, and Kim Taylor. And directors returning, requiring re-election, appointed for a 2-year term. We have Jeff O'Hare and Gail Walker. And lastly, a new director to be appointed for a 1-year term, Estelle Iza. If I could get a motion to accept the nomination committee report and elect those directors.
I move to accept the nomination committee's report and the election of those listed to the board of directors for terms identified. Kathy Rushton.
And a seconder, please.
Jeff Hohenkirk, I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? That's motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 8. Outgoing directors. We mentioned Jessica previously, just a bit in my report, but I'd like to expand on that just a little bit. Some of you may know this. For others, it's new, but Jessica joined the board of directors in 2015, and she served as the board treasurer for the last 5 years. And for those who are not aware, the treasurer's position is by far the most demanding role, the most demanding board role, certainly in my opinion. Jessica is a professional accountant and she immediately began making a positive impact on the organization. She's a fiscal conservative, and even though we've always had great financial management on staff, I've always felt very confident knowing that Jessica was overseeing the treasury. She's always thorough and well prepared for meetings. And if you get into a technical debate with her, she's almost always right. It goes well beyond financial issues as well. Being one of the younger members of the board, we've benefited from Jessica's perspective and contributions on all the major board issues. She's been a very valuable member of the executive committee as well, and I thank her for that. She's very wise beyond her years, in my opinion, and while she's not the loudest person in the room, she always has a well thought out and well communicated position on all major issues. We're a lot better organization because of Jessica, and we thank her for that. Now, Jessica, we do have a gift for you, and unfortunately, we can't present that in person under the circumstances. Brandy's holding it up there, but that is one of a number of paintings that Bruce Lawton produced a number of years ago. Bruce was a former board member as well as a board chair, and he produced a number of paintings and donated them to United Way with the objective of the organization using those for departing board members. So they're very beautiful paintings, and it looks as though it's been framed, very beautifully framed as well. So we hope you enjoy that, Jessica, and we wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, and I know you're going to do well. Thank you again for your contributions.
Thank you so much, Tim, for saying that. Thank you for the gift. It's really, truly, I've gained more from being part of this organization than I could have possibly given. So just to the staff, to the board members, everyone involved, thank you.
And agenda item number 9, if I could get somebody for a motion for adjournment. And I will note, as most of you know, we are going to have a brief meeting after we finish this particular AGM.
So it's Kathy Rushton, and I will be making that motion. But first, I'd like to take an opportunity to recognize you, Tim, as outgoing chair. Brandy did a very nice job in her comments, but I think on behalf of the board, it's important that we do so as well. I'd also like to echo my thanks to Jessica for the work she's done. But Brandy's comments nicely summarized exactly my view of you and your approach to being chair and to being a board member. I'd like to really add my personal thanks to you for the leadership that you've shown, and my appreciation for your wisdom, thoughtful, confident leadership, the fact that you're open to creative conflict, the fact that you and I are probably polar opposites, and yet we've managed to work together, and your strong commitment to the United Way. They will truly be big shoes to fill, and I'm really happy that you're not leaving us and will be around to continue to provide that wisdom. And I just want to remind the board that the last 2 years have been pretty interesting. We've had some serious discussions about our changing environment in the United Way movement and in the community, heightened by the COVID-19 issues we're facing now, and are moving towards a new strategic plan. We've laid some of that groundwork, and more of that will happen in the next year. And also the fact that, as Brandy mentioned, you were extremely supportive in working through her transition to the executive director position. So I just want to echo all of that. I want to note that you are always incredibly principled, and you're always thinking about what's right for this community and its United Way. So really, as I said before, I look forward to your continued guidance as you carry on as a board member. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kathy.
You are most welcome. And having said all of that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
And a seconder, please.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Your last official duty there. And All in favor? Okay. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes the 2020 Annual General Meeting of United Way Hastings and Prince Edward. Hope you have a great evening.